Okay, I'd like to say hello to everyone. I'm doing a new video uh, explaining the process that you're going through to do the curriculum of difficulty assignment from the Leah Fowler book on curriculum of difficulty. Um, so let me share screen. I have a short outline. I hope I'm hoping this doesn't take too long. So the curriculum of difficulty project is really what could be called an autoethnography. So, ethnography is a form of qualitative research in which you are observing or questioning a person or people. So, in a sense, the curriculum of difficulty is a process by which you are questioning and, if you will, observing yourself. The observation is more through your mind's eye, is one way to think about it. It's self-reflective. So another way to think about this project is to think about it as reflective practice, which all of y'all are somewhat familiar with, but it's kind of on steroids. It's as Emerald would say, kicked up a notch. Okay. It's a form of autobiographical writing because you're writing about yourself. Fowler takes you through 7 orbitals. And I will have a video on those orbitals, hopefully, if not next week, then the following week. Yeah. Because it's important to go through those. I know, I want you to be able to spend some time over the next couple of weeks, if you've not already done so, to read through the first 5 or 6 orbitals at least. So, and she takes you through, in a sense, this is, you can think about this as kind of historical, because ethnography, while there's some differences, are very similar to oral history. And it's a self-history, if you want to think about it that way. Depends on how old your difficulty is, too. So, and she uses some techniques when she talks about them. Generally, they're sort of psychoanalytical, and hermeneutical. So hermeneutical is a fancy way of talking about, interpreting text. And so what text are you interpreting? Well, you're interpreting your text. And so there's an important part of this project in which you have to spend some time. You cannot do this in a weekend, okay? Because you will need to, as you go through the orbitals, you will need to go back and rethink things. And so you may be making edits, and that's the point, actually, to your narrative. Okay. So she's big into narrative writing, and I would suggest that all research writing is narrative. And so part of the point of the project in 504 besides the kind of philosophical, historical aspect, is for you to get practice in writing research. The data for your research is your story. It's your recollection. Okay. So you have to treat your recollections and your analysis of those recollections as data. So you're constantly putting that data through questions that she raises in the different orbitals. Okay. So that's an important, I'll leave talking about Fowler there. The book is broken up into explanations of the orbitals and then little stories. So, as you read the little stories, you need to think about the orbital you just read about, because there's a relationship. It's not always explicit, but you need to begin to think about that. Okay, so the first orbital, the first part of the assignment is your naive story. I think I've received one so far. And all I'll say about the naive story, I mean, you're explaining your difficulty. Now, this isn't this is a paragraph, okay, essentially. You don't want to do analysis. I have an example of my own. You want to keep, if you're writing about people you have difficulty with, you want to keep those people anonymous. You can use code words or pseudonyms or however you want to do that. And so the naive story is just your basic explanation of the difficulty without any analysis. Don't go into any detail. Just talk about what you have. Again, you probably can get that done in a paragraph, maybe two short paragraphs. So it shouldn't really be much more than a third of a page, I guess. If it goes to half a page, that's fine. If it's a quarter of a page, that's fine too. I mean, if it's 5, 6, 7 sentences. Okay, so that's the first part. Okay, and you'll email that to me. As I said, I've got one in. I will look at it and basically tell you if that will work. Rarely do I have to ask any of the students to come up with something different. Sometimes they're not really difficult. So clearly for those who are teachers, because I know there are non-teachers here in the class, then your difficulty is something that occurs in your classroom with a student. It could be with a supervisor, it could be with a colleague, it could be with a parent. All those areas most of the difficulties come from that. If you're not a teacher, I mean, clearly your difficulty for some will come from workplace. Some of you who are working on campus in the past, folks like you in higher ed, usually talk about something. It can be at Nichols. It doesn't have to be at Nichols. It could be a previous work experience. Doesn't have to be the university setting. It can be any job setting. It could be something from your own school experience, university experience, if you want. Okay. I'd rather not difficulties, with boyfriends or girlfriends. I'll put it that way. And really, I've never gotten that, so that's kind of I'm making light. So that's the first step. Okay. And that is due on September 11th. I know there was some confusion with, trying to pull this up. So I'm looking at the 1, 2, 3 steps on the schedule in the syllabus. So yes. So September 11th. I hope that's a Monday. No, that's a Friday. I don't know why I have a Monday. So it would be Friday, September 11th. I must not have changed that from the original. Another mistake. You know, I think right when I think I've gotten everything cleaned up, it's things change. So that is a week from tomorrow to have the naive story in. And again, just email me that. You will then begin to take your story through the orbitals. Excuse me. So you know, page 30 of the book, as you can see, gives you a short synopsis of each orbital. So you begin with naive storing, psychological reconstruction, psychotherapeutic ethics. You know, these are those after the naive story, those are the next two. And that's where you're getting into a little bit of psychoanalysis of yourself. So the assumption here is, you know, the difficulty creates some type of stress, some type of maybe even trauma. You get a sense of trauma from some of Fowler's stories. So you're going through those first. And so you want to put your naive story and begin through these two orbitals and begin building your narrative. So you're thinking about the harm that was done to you, and possibly and probably the harm that you did to the other. That is part of your difficulty, because as my mother would always tell us as kids, it takes two to tango. So there are at least two people, and sometimes more, in your difficulty. Okay. I would go through those two orbitals first, and then I would let some time go, a few days. So that's 2 and 3, and then you may want to come back to it as you continue to read through Fowler's book. You may want to then try to take those initial reflections and put them into the 4 is a narrative. She calls it narrative craft, which is largely about constructing, the grammatical, syntactical structure of your narrative, the logic of your narrative, and then 5 is the hermeneutical part. In the hermeneutical part, basically what you're doing is you're trying to read between the lines. As I said, I'm going to be talking about the orbitals. So, and then you'll finish off with 6 if you want to go to 7, you can. I don't know that there is enough time to get to 7 and to really think about that in a real way. Some of you may be able to move a bit quicker than others. If you get to 7, that's fine. The key thing about 6 is basically what have you learned about yourself and how you deal with these situations later. So you will then, once you complete that, you will then turn that in, email that to me, and that's due on October 23rd. Then, and I believe, I don't have a status. Looking at my calendar. So, hold on. Or there it is. October 23rd is a Friday again. And then I will get those back to you. Once you send me your rough draft, you email me your rough draft, then I read it, maybe do some editing, maybe tell you you don't need to do anything. That happens more often than not. Or not more often than not, but it's there are some of you that are able to do this and not need feedback, or there's nothing I can add to what you've written about. And I send that back to you on November 6th, which is the following Friday. Then you take my comments. You may need to build on a couple of areas that I see through the process, and then you submit the final in Portfolio on November 13th, which is a week later. Okay. Generally, that final process isn't too arduous. Okay. It's usually simple things and maybe an additional paragraph I ask you to work on. Okay. So don't think, well, we got to spend all week working on it. No, it's a pretty good process. Okay. So we've gone through my outline. I'll be doing another video probably tomorrow on the Moral Classroom project. And so I'll be talking about that, particularly in light of I'm seeing it's great difficulty and maybe even impossibility of actually observing anyone. So how do we handle that? And so I'll be talking about that tomorrow. Thank you all. And I'll have a great day.